There's a setup for you. I have to get some bend in this tip right here on the flat bow that's recurved, which happens to be a really firecracker of a bow. It's reflexed. It's going to have a draw length, half the length knock to knock, 53 inches knock to knock. It's kind of difficult even to string because it has such a high initial strength. Drew is understanding. Before I get into the details of this, I'm going to tell you a little story. There was a fellow in a western state. I don't want to pick on him too much. This was years ago, so I don't even know if he's still around. He wanted a longbow made out of Osage that was sinew backed, and he said between 40 and 41 pounds at 28 and a half inches of draw. That is darn near specific. And the first thing I said was, there's no reason to make an Osage longbow that's sinew backed that's about 40 pounds. It's just, all you're going to do is you're going to have a real dog of a bow. It's just overbuilt and just too heavy. No, he wants it. The second point was, I'm in Michigan. Certain humidity range, temperature range, it varies in the winter and stuff like that. But if I create an Osage bow that's sinew backed on this day, at this time, these weather conditions, it's 40 and a half pounds at 28 and a half inches of draw. This is particular. Should have turned this job down. When it winds up in this western state and sits for a bit, or if you just let it sit a bit and then you haven't used it for a while and then you string it and you hit it the first time, you can't make a sinew backed bow at an exact draw weight and draw length. It's going to move around the country and it's going to be sitting and then used and then sit. It just doesn't work that way. Again, I should have turned down that job, but I made it. And just like I knew, it was not a fast bow because it was overbuilt. I mean, I suppose I could have made it a half inch wide, but then it would have been a stupid looking bow. It's I don't know. Drew, as well as most people out there, are understanding. Told him in an email, it's between 55 and 60 pounds, and I make a bow, especially a sinew back bow, for what it's going to be and not what it is right now, because it's going to be variable. But, most people are able to accept, like me personally, 45 to 60 pounds. It is what it is. You can judge, how far the arrow is going to drop just by the feeling of the weight. If you look at that video, I am John, this is my bow, doing a 70-yard shot cold with a paddle bow, or others with horse bows and stuff, you get a feeling of how far you're pulling it back. And, it just is what it is with a sinew back bow. But anyway, I can string this up, and the string stays on the tips. It's a contact recurve before you draw it back, and then it's off the recurves, and then it goes on the recurve. And the string stays on, but I want to have it perfectly centered, so I've got this set up in this way. Jorgensen clamp holding the bow, the main part, towards the handle. Then I've got this one set up on the tip, so it has weight that's holding the recurve down. So I don't need to be concerned about affecting the recurve on this. And it's also, because it's weighted, it needs to rotate this way. The weight of that. Now you see this dopey little stick right here that's wiggling? I've got a pencil mark there. And so when I heat this up, keeping the sinew intact, I'll be able to see when this moves up off the pencil line, I'm golden, because I don't need to put more of a bend in it. It's a tricky bow because the limb that I need to change also has a wiggle near the tip, which adds weird leverage to it. So there's a lot of forces going on here. And at this point, if somebody was to say, John, I want you to make a Osage sinew back gull wing, and I pick a nice straight piece of Osage, work it down, sinew back it, tiller it, bend it, the whole 9 yards, let's just say. It's routine. There's no surprises. It's simple. Start to finish, boom. A bow like this, little firecracker, again, really high initial forces on there because it's reflexed and it's recurved and it's 53 inches knock to knock and it's going to be a 23-inch draw or 26-inch draw. It is kind of challenging just to string and get the brace height right. But I like it because it takes my mind off other things. And I still learn, so it's good learning. Now these are a couple other things. Because it has such a high initial draw poundage, draw weight, and it's kind of challenging to string, and I want to keep those stressed tips, the sinew on there. The best thing would be to reinforce it with sinew, but that would make it hard to string. Sliding the loop up. This is going to have just a loop and then a tied-on end, maybe. It should really have a standard like 2-loop string with straight fibers, straight B50 strands or B55 strands, just because I'll string it, and then the brace height, again, high initial draw weight, it'll go and then snap. You have to get it just right. And so it really needs to have like an endless string, and that's out of my wheelhouse. What other notes? Oh, and so I'm toying with the notion just to keep the sinew intact. If it was my bow, it wouldn't matter. I'd just repair it. A month, a year, 2 years down the line, if the sinew lifted up on the edges a little bit, whatever, I'd just repair it. I'd maintain it and fix it. But since it's a sales bow, I'm thinking, what's more slippery than, instead of using any wrapped sinew reinforcement on the tips, rawhide. And that would look really cool too. It'd look like rawhide socks on the tips of this bow. And it would be smooth. It would allow the string to slide up and down. So I'm toying with the notion of using rawhide. Take a sheet, sand it really thin. It just needs to be super-de-duper thin. And so it's not going to affect the weight that much, And again, this short bow, relatively long draw length, recurved, I don't need to worry about making the tips a little bit heavier. It's still going to be like a really fast freaking bow, maybe even flight bow level. But yeah, that's about it. Oh, and if I do rawhide here on outside of the handle, it'll also be rawhide, and probably a mid-limb. The natives used to do that on their sinew back bows, have mid-limb wraps for decoration and also keep that sinew down, over the course of time. Because Osage isn't like red oak. And so you make every effort to keep everything down. And don't mix metaphors. Rawhide here, then centered wrap on the limbs, rawhide, outside of the handle, rawhide, stick with one medium. And then, away we go. But yeah, this is not an easy bow. It's probably the most challenging bow I've made in a long time. Would I recommend, a bow like this? Sure, it's going to be a fast bow. But when you get into it, especially if you got a little snakes in the tips and it's recurved, that causes a little bit of leverage, you might have to do some differential thinning on the limbs just to keep things straight. That means you've got your cross section, and then one edge is a little thinner than the other. That means that thinner edge will be a little more flexible than the stiffer side. And you can repair propeller twists in wider bows doing that. One edge literally can be stiffer than the other edge, and then it'll cause a fixed twist. Well, I'm going to get going here. I'm going to start heating this up. If this heat gun's not enough, I got a second one I'll plug in, and I'll do two-fisted heat gunning to get the temperature up. And again, I wouldn't necessarily have to have any reinforcement on the sinew on the tips, but honestly, chances are it's not going to damage the backing, but it might affect the strength of the edges. If they do pop up a little bit, you know, you can soften them up, little tea kettle, get that sinew soft. And then I would use Titebond, just to be sure. I'm a hide glue person, but, you know, just to be sure, and add a little bit of waterproofing, you know, there's nothing wrong with Titebond. Well, that is it. Ow, old man noises. My knee is still not 100%. Ooh, and it's cold. Have a good one, and thank you for watching.